This is the number of people reaching retirement age in France, and this is the number of people entering the workforce. The fact that more people are retiring than entering the workforce is causing a major problem. A problem we're seeing all across the world, but especially in Europe and North America. Now, this article from the Wall Street Journal brings up a compounding issue, which is the disproportionate voting strength that seniors have because of all of these demographic issues. Now, before we jump into the three really interesting points that article brings up, let's look at the population pyramids and understand exactly what's going on. So this is the population of France back in 1950, and you can see that there's a large number of workers compared to the number of retirees. That's important because the European pension systems and the US Social Security system both work on the taxes that they are currently raising from workers to pay for the benefits of the retirees. That's how it was designed to work, that's how it's always worked. But fast forward to 2024, because of changes in demographic, effectively people are having a lot less kids these days, it's shifting towards a much older population. Now, I'll share a video about why all that's happening and lots of the impacts of that, but for the sake of the rest of this video, we just need to understand that there are substantially less workers these days for all of these retirees. That's causing all sorts of financial problems where they effectively aren't raising enough taxes to pay for all of these retirees. And if you've got a problem in a democracy, you need to turn to the voters, which is where the Wall Street Journal article comes in. The first big takeaway from the article is this graph. So green is registered voters, orange actual voters. This is a ratio, so effectively the bottom means that it's skewed towards younger voters, and at the top is skewed towards older voters. You can see going back to 1960, it's always been skewed towards younger voters, which is just kind of the way it has always been with population growth the way it has. But recently, because of demographics, even registered voters is nearing parity, meaning there's pretty much one voter over 60 for every voter under 40. You can see this dramatically, these are numbers for Britain, in their kind of recent elections. So here we're talking about Brexit. Voters under 35 voted almost 2-1 to remain in the EU, while voters over 55 strongly favored leaving. They of course left, the older voters won, and the UK economy is 5% smaller than it would have been if Brexit hadn't happened, according to Goldman Sachs. That's a kind of coulda, shoulda, woulda estimate, but virtually every economist on the planet knew that this was not going to be good for Britain's economy, and younger voters wanted to stay in a globalized economy where they could be prosperous in. But this is going on even more when you look at what's going on with their real estate. So this is a city council in London saying that roughly 9 in 10 housing proposals are getting turned down because you get lobbied like crazy with emails and petitions and people turning up. Usually it's the existing homeowners, and the people who have time on their hands to do that are retirees, right? The older population is preventing new residential development, which is of course leading to a housing shortage. Housing prices are going through the roof. You can see the 72-year-old retiree bought a home for £152,000 in 2000. We're not talking about 1970 here or something. This is only 24 years ago. It's probably worth $2 million now. You have to understand that in England, when you buy a house, you actually pay like a sales tax on it. So not only are these houses unaffordable for young workers, but they then have to pay a percentage-based tax. So the more expensive the house is, the more that tax is, and the tax rate even goes up when you're buying a house this hard, because the law is kind of written assuming that a $2 million home is like a luxury home. So instead of paying 5% if you buy it for $200,000, you have to pay like 10 or 15% because it's worth $2 million, right? So it's just this like triple whammy going on for young buyers that can't afford houses. Meanwhile, at the same time, things are changing, so workers 65 and older no longer have to pay an 8% national insurance tax to fund welfare spending, effectively giving them a pay raise. And despite that 1 in 4 British pensioners is a millionaire in pounds, a figure that has risen 4-fold in the last 10 years. And tax and benefit changes since 2010 have left the average UK pensioner about £1,000 a year better off, while households with children 14 and under are £800 worse off, right? This is cutting off the hand that feeds you, right? These retirees rely on the economic support of the working class, and that working class is shrinking compared to the number of retirees. And they're trying to fix the problem by just hammering the working class more. But when you look at what's going on in France, you can't just blame this on older workers. In fact, it's the opposite, in my opinion, with what's going on in France. So, last year, famously, Emmanuel Macron, the French president, raised full retirement age for their pension system from 62 to 64. It was wildly unpopular, nationwide protests by people of all ages, and it was effectively political suicide. So he knew he wasn't going to gain any popularity or voters from this. It did nothing for him and his party. So why would he have done this if it wasn't the best thing for the country? And we saw it in the vote. His party comes out third. The other two parties are both opposed to the pension changes, and one of the parties wants to lower the retirement age to 60. Remember that population pyramid? They want to take that top line and move it in the wrong direction, right? It needs to go up to make there more workers for the number of retirees. We'll talk about that when we get to the solutions, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But you can't blame this on old voters. If you're over age 64, who cares whether they're going to raise full retirement age from 62 to 64? Only young voters would care about that, right? So, this narrative that it's only old voters that are screwing up the vote, I think is, you got to take that with a grain of salt. Now, the economic solution here is not that hard to understand. There's really only three solutions. The first is to pay less benefits. This would be very politically unpopular and probably never allow you to get elected. To go to a 75-year-old and say that we're going to reduce your benefits after you've left the workforce 10 years prior and already planned out the rest of your life, in my opinion, is not fair. So really the only way that you can reduce paying benefits is by increasing the full retirement age. Longevity has changed such that people have substantially longer retirements now than they did when Social Security was designed. This in the US is the plan of the Republican Party to continue to move full retirement age from 67 to as late as 70. I fully support this. This is a great plan. Now, solution number two is to raise more tax revenue. But eventually this is kind of like trying to get water out of a stone, because this is going against the demographic shifts, and this is not going to get any better soon. This is actually going to get worse. So trying to continuously tax a shrinking workforce eventually becomes counterproductive. So we need to find kind of almost new sources of tax revenue instead of here in the US what would be raising FICA taxes, Social Security and Medicare taxes. And the Democrats have been proposing things like that along the lines of tacking additional taxes onto things like capital gains, or possibly going after unrealized gains or wealth. There's some legal challenges to those last two, but this is another good solution. And quite frankly, both of these solutions need to happen. So we both need to raise full retirement age as well as find new revenue streams. But the third solution, which is the one that I think is going to be the most dominant over the next 20, 40 years, is to find more workers. You don't have to increase your tax rate on your workers if you can get more workers. Now we're going to start getting real political. And I understand that we can argue till we're blue in the face about illegal immigration and the costs of it and the drawbacks and what we should do about it and all of that. But there is one thing that is fairly well understood in the US. To come and work here legally is extremely difficult, if not virtually impossible, unless you're coming with a master's degree or a doctorate to work for a big tech company. If you just want to come here to be a working class citizen and try and do it legally, it is virtually impossible. And we certainly are not bringing in enough people to meet the labor needs that we have here in the US. So when it comes to these demographic videos that I have done many, I have repeated over and over that in the next 20 to 40 years, the countries and regions that are going to become the economic powerhouses are those countries that are going to be able to attract and maintain a young workforce to support their aging workforce. And it's not hard to imagine that as these demographic shifts and older voters have this disproportionate voting power, that many places will just try and tax as much as they can out of their working class population. But the first country, region, or whatever it is that figures out We don't have to increase the taxes of them if we can just attract all the young workers to come and work here. And it almost becomes a double-edged sword. And if you're a 25-year-old British person and politics is going the way of just entirely increasing taxes on the working age population in a place like US or France or wherever it is, dramatically changes the way someone comes to work at their country and allows them to come there and begin paying into their systems, it is going to be the resource that everyone is fighting over, in my opinion, in about 10 years. This is not an easy problem to solve. All of the solutions require people to think over the long term and not the short. That's a very tough thing for politicians and voters, whether they're old or young. Now, if you're interested in all this talk about demographics, then check out this video and the playlist that I'll put in the description. Otherwise, stick around the channel for similar content, and I will talk to you soon.